differences.
Well, I do understand because I've learned so much. Just kidding. Okay, so I'm just gonna make sure we're streaming, and we're not.
You want me to check on my phone?
Yeah, that would be cool. We are. Okay, I'm gonna pin Emily. It says you already are pinned. There we go. Okay, cool. And we're live. Can you see if you can hear us, Angie, on your phone?
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is Teresa from California. I can hear you on my phone.
Okay, good. I just wanted to see if people could hear us. Yeah, they can. On Facebook, too, because we're also streaming this to Facebook.
Yeah, I just checked and I can.
From California. I can.
Okay, cool.
I just.
All right, sweet. Well, hey, everyone out there in Facebook and YouTube world. We are streaming live here from all across the country. We got DC, Virginia, California, Georgia. Are you in Maryland or Virginia, Angel? I forgot.
Maryland.
We've got a lot of states
Virginia.
on this call. Oh, and Abby's in Texas. Or maybe, probably Texas.
I'm in Arlington, so we've got
a lot. And we've got the stars represented. And so I'm Lauren, for all of you guys who are just tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. We are raising money for Habitat for Humanity's COVID-19 relief efforts. This is our billionth day of the HABITHON, and we're joined by Emily from Woven Psyche, and this is the tarot party. So we're about to just dive right in. Do you want to talk? Emily actually was on our first HABITHON, the original, which was a 24-hour long event, and we had so much fun. It was like a 30-minute session, but we realized it needed to be a lot longer because we had a lot more to cover and everyone got a lot out of it. So now this is a full-length episode, baby, and it's at 7, so it's a party. So
I should have, one of my pet projects is mixology, and I've been developing tarot-themed cocktails. I didn't even think about this. I should have sent out a tarot-themed cocktail recipe so that people could have their cocktails in hand.
Well, that just means we're going to have to do this again.
It's mostly just a giant thing of whiskey. That's how I make a cocktail these days. But
well, I have wine, so hopefully that will yield some good results too. Okay.
So, Lauren, did you have specific questions, or should I just kind of launch into?
Well, can you first just tell us a little bit about Woven Psyche and how you got into tarot, and then we can ask you about the history, and I'm sure that people on the call will have questions too, just about what tarot is and how it works.
Okay. So Woven Psyche is my small business. It is a self-care business that is based on a core of tarot. So because my background is in tarot, but as I got more and more into tarot and I did tarot readings professionally in a variety of incarnations before launching Woven Psyche in early 2018, I realized tarot is actually a platform for a lot of self-care. And so everything is built on top of tarot, but it's not just tarot. I got into it completely by accident. I'm a pretty science-minded, skeptical person, and the only reason I'm into it is because I've learned from past experience that it works. And so I was handed a tarot deck by a friend in high school. I had never expressed any previous interest in it, but it had belonged to her sister. Sister didn't want it anymore. I really liked the craft and Ursula the Sea Witch, and my friend said, okay, you seem like you would like this. So she just gave me this tarot deck that I basically had and did nothing with for years and years. Went to college, went to grad school, moved to DC. And then my first year in DC, my roommate came from a long line of Parisian tarot readers. So it had been in her family. And I said, well, I have a tarot deck. Why don't you teach me how to read? So we sat down and went through a few things together, and I just kind of had a knack for it. So I decided that I wanted to explore it further and ended up joining a local tarot society here in the DC area, of which I am now the co-facilitator. And it just kind of took off from there. I started learning from other people. And what I really found was that learning tarot from a book is really hard. When you start to learn from other people and learn that there's more than one way of doing things and that you can have your own personal style, you get to learn by doing. My talent just kind of skyrocketed by engaging with other tarot readers. And so, I kind of took off. And I probably started doing paid tarot readings, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, and I've done it on a variety of platforms. A very short stint doing it for a psychic hotline, which did not last very long. That was not very rewarding work. Even did a few, like there was kind of the equivalent of a psychic hotline that did online readings by video chat. And that got creepy really quick. So that didn't last a very long time. Then I started doing it on Etsy, and that lasted a while. I was doing readings by Etsy on my own for a few years. And I think there were some pros and cons to that. But Etsy as a platform, I started to get really frustrated with it. And, you know, because of the way that Etsy was formatted and the quality of the inquiries I was getting, it stopped being very rewarding, and it felt more like a chore than something I really loved doing. And I wasn't really connecting personally. So at the beginning of 2018, I had an opportunity to begin teaching tarot classes at a local art studio and workshop venue. And was really encouraged to start doing that by a friend of mine. And after a few months of that, I decided to launch Woven Psyche as a business to really expand upon what I was already doing with tarot, anchor it more in the local community in DC, start offering classes and expanding on the self-care elements beyond just doing a yes, no, here's your future tarot reading. So that's kind of what happened. That was at the beginning of 2018, and I've been doing that ever since, and I'm really happy with where I am right now.
Okay, that's awesome. And if anyone has any questions, y'all can ask them along the way. So it's like an open Q&A, and then afterwards, after you hear about some history, she's actually going to do some readings, and we might get like a short lesson, so things are going to get really wild. So my quick question is, well, I have two. One, what does Woven Psyche mean? I guess that was the only one because it's been a long day. And
So when I decided to launch it, I have this friend that I mentioned who was like, you need to come to this. It was the Lemon Collective. If anybody in the DC area knows it, they're not really doing it anymore. But like I had a friend who was very involved at the Lemon Collective doing her own workshops there. She ended up launching her own massive coaching business out of that she now does full time and is like doing very well. And she and I were sitting there saying, okay, I'm going to launch this business. What do we name it? So we like sat down in a cocktail bar and just started like shooting names for my business back and forth and deciding what feels right and just throwing out words. And at the time, I was really interested in doing like combined tarot and meditation and crafting classes because of the venue I was at. And like, I really wanted to learn weaving, and I'm already like super into other types of fiber art. Like I was going to do meditative knitting circles. None of that ended up panning out. Nobody was interested in doing it. So like that got scrapped like early in my business, but I just bought a loom. And so we were just kind of like throwing out these words, and the words Woven Psyche just at one point came out of my mouth, and we both went, that's it. And it was a weird enough, memorable enough name that I didn't have to worry about it being taken or other people like trying to take it. Like if you hear Woven Psyche together, that's me, that's my business. You're not going to encounter that anywhere else. It starts with a W, which is kind of like a little bit unusual. You know, it doesn't sound like your normal business name. So from marketing and branding perspectives, it worked as well. But I don't want to say that it like came to me in a dream or anything all that fascinating. It was just the result of a brainstorming session with a friend.
That's awesome. Yeah, for a while, I actually found Emily on Instagram, and I just DM'd her, and this ended up working out really well. But I didn't know if you actually like went by Woven Psyche. So like every time I talk to you, I'd be like Woven Psyche, yeah, blah blah. But it's so it's separate from your actual being.
I call myself Emily from Woven Psyche because Emily is a really common name. We have another Emily on the call. And so, you know, Psychic Emily or Emily the Tarot Reader wasn't going to work. So that's just kind of how I identify myself.
Cool. Well, does anyone have any initial questions before we start learning about like the history of tarot?
What made, I think you said before Etsy, you had like another platform. What made it creepy? Like, I want you to go into that.
Okay. So there's a website called I Am Live, which is a webcamming website. And it is sexual in nature, but they have a sister website called We Are Live, which is for professionals like tarot readers, and I think therapists and other people to offer their services on a paid basis, because I think they figured we already have this, you know, fairly powerful webcamming platform, we can leverage this. And you get paid a lot more by the hour on the We Are Live side than on the I Am Live side. And I don't remember how I found it, but I was like, okay, I can try this because they have this huge network. Like they have, because of the sexy webcamming, they had like this huge community. And you had the option of whether or not you wanted to let people who were using I Am Live services join We Are Live. And that seemed to make the most sense because there were way more people registered with I Am Live, like huge, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of users, but so my options were don't open it up to those people and get, very few readings a week, or open it up and get a lot of interest, but then you're dealing with people who view the site as a place to go do sexy stuff. So and I made it abundantly clear in my marketing, I do tarot. This is not sexy webcam work. Like, go over to I Am Live if you want sexy webcam work. Like, you don't, like, there's plenty of that if that's what you want. You do not, and so what would happen is I would get guys who would say, yeah, I want a tarot reading. And then slowly over the course of the video, like some creepy things would happen. Like, I remember there was this one dude who like when it started, he was like this, I could tell that his shoulders were bare. So I could tell he didn't have a shirt on. And I was like, maybe he's just, lazy and just chilling. Like, guys like to hang out with their shirts off, whatever. And over the course of the thing, he slowly backed up or lowered the camera, and he was wearing women's clothing, like a bustier, which is fine, whatever works for you. If that's how you dress at home, that's, but it was clear that it was done to get a reaction out of me. And it was clear that it was being done in a way that was it wasn't just like he's somebody who likes to wear women's clothing and that's how he feels comfortable. Like it was definitely, meant to affect me. And I think he was trying to get a reaction out of me. And I think the fact that I wasn't on the sexy webcam side, the fact that I was not part of that is part of why he was interested in that, just like stuff like that. And I was like, and when you know that that's happening, you're like, what do I do? Do I just keep with the tarot reading? Do I stop and say something? So I just continued with my tarot reading, but I was flustered. And so the quality of the reading went down, tried to be as professional as possible. Whereas if somebody came to me now and, was dressed a little atypically, but that was just their normal, how they are, it wouldn't be an issue. It was the fact that this person was clearly trying to get some type of rise out of me that made it difficult. So that's one example.
I feel like it has to be hard to transition from a sex website to a normal website. I feel like if anything, if you had a Safe for Everyone website and you could have an adult version, I just can't see. I've never heard of something. It's like Cinemax. If for those young people, you might not really remember Cinemax, but now it's kids Cinemax. It's just, you don't usually go the opposite way. So I feel for We Are Live.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
Well, so that was short-lived. I think I did it for maybe 2 weeks, and I was like, the money was good. But money was good, eh? Wasn't.
Have you thought about creating a Patreon?
I'm actually working on that right now.
Awesome.
But what I want to do, because I have stuff. I have regular clients, and then I have an online tarot classroom that people can sign up for, and a number of different services that I offer. And so it's not that wouldn't be the core of my business model, but because of the pandemic and everybody pivoting to virtual, I've considered, what can I do to increase my online presence and my virtual offerings? And I've always had this fantasy of doing retail, but I don't want, but that's a whole other business model, and it triggers all kinds of additional legal requirements and sales tax and so the idea of doing a membership where every month my members get a tarot deck that I've curated or some type of self-care item. Patreon would charge the sales tax for me. So there are a lot of benefits to Patreon. So I've been looking into that and playing around with that. And I'm literally in the process of developing that.
So a tarot card, self-care box subscription?
Sort of. So on Patreon, you can offer a lot of different perks. So what I'm thinking of doing is having 2 different levels. One is I'm thinking of writing long form articles. And Patreon members would have that. And then the higher level would also involve some type of retail gift box every month. It's just whatever I feel like putting in there that month.
Well, as someone that used to have 3 different subscription boxes at once or more, I would definitely be interested in that. But I just want to hop back over really quick to tarot. And I was wondering, like, I feel like, and anyone, again, ask the questions if you have one. But I think that, like, there's like probably a misunderstanding that tarot is like the devil's work. Like, I know when I mentioned this at Habitat, there were people that were like, oh, we've never mixed tarot with Habitat, like blah, blah, blah. So, like, are there like stereotypes that you could dismantle right here, right now?
There are so many stereotypes, and like the media does not help. Like every time there's a tarot reading in a movie, it's like, oh, you got the death card and that person dies. Well, first of all, the death card in tarot stands for rebirth and transformation. It's actually a really beautiful card, and it's like a really positive card if it comes up in your reading. There's a great scene in The Simpsons where Lisa goes to a reader and the death card comes up. And the reader goes, oh, the death card. And Lisa goes, oh, no. And the reader goes, no, that's good. That's good. And then this like squirrel card comes up, which is not a real card. And that's horrible. So a lot of people in my tarot community love getting like squirrel themed items from that. But there's no squirrel card in reality. But yeah, so tarot grew up as a playing card game in late medieval, early Renaissance Europe. It started in Italy, then moved to France, and then kind of went out from there. The earliest decks. So what distinguishes tarot from regular poker playing cards, which grew up around the same time, is there's an extra suit. And that extra suit is called trump cards, or you can call it the major arcana. And then the other 4 suits look just like playing card suits. And they go ace through 10, and then you have court card figures. So in the game of trumps, of tarocchi, you know, you could get into these like philosophical arguments about what trumped what. And it was definitely a game for people of leisure. And when it first came out, you know, they didn't have strong printing technology, and the decks were handmade and beautifully illustrated and illuminated with gold. And so very few decks were made by any particular artist, and you had to be pretty wealthy to have a tarot deck. And most of the minor arcana, those regular, more poker style cards, were not illustrated. They looked like playing cards. So like the 4 of diamonds would have, or the 4 of swords would have 4 swords on it, just like the 4 of diamonds. But then you had this additional suit that was illustrated, and it would have like archetypical figures like the Pope or, you know, the sun, and those would be beautifully illustrated. As printing technology improved, they became more accessible to more people, more decks came out, and people started using them more and more for divination. But, you know, divination, you can use anything for divination. So like if you look at it, like divination is a category up here, and then one branch of divination is cartomancy, which is using cards for fortune telling. And then tarot is one branch off of that. There are other forms of cartomancy. Like I just picked up this thing called the Lenormand. It's a totally different type of deck. Tarot has 78 cards. Lenormand has 36. And you can do readings where you pull out all 36 cards and put them in a table. And that's how you read with Lenormand. So I know nothing about it. I just got this. Right. So tarot is one branch of cartomancy. And like other forms of divination are things like crystal ball readings or scrying or phrenology or palmistry or tea leaf reading. Right. So I don't think it's that there's anything inherently mystical about the tarot. It's that anything will ultimately be used for divination. Tarot just happens to be a really effective means of doing it because you have 78 different images. So it's a lot of information. And ultimately, in the 1800s, tarot had this kind of renaissance during the spiritualist movement. So when you look at like Victorian seances and stuff, those were the spiritualists. And so there's this big reinvigoration of interest in tarot and divination practice. Whole schools of spiritualist thought came out around that time and around the turn of the century. A really famous one was called The Golden Dawn. There was this guy named Aleister Crowley who came out of that. There's actually a movie that just came out on Netflix. I can't remember which one it's called, but it's in New Orleans, and they go to the bars that Aleister Crowley used to go to. And, you know, so like Victorians got really into this stuff. And then around the turn of the century, some guys who came out of the spiritualist movement called Rider and Waite hired a woman named Pamela Coleman Smith to do a fully illustrated tarot deck. Pamela Coleman Smith was a set designer. She's a really cool woman. She was a suffragette. If you read her biography, she's just a badass. She was a set designer for Bram Stoker, and she had lived all over. She studied like art in Rhode Island, but she was from England. She had lived in Jamaica. So like really cosmopolitan, interesting woman, hung out a lot in the theater, got paid very little money to illustrate all 78 cards. And she created this deck that was the first deck to have all cards illustrated. And that came out at the turn of the 20th century. So that deck is now referred to as the Rider-Waite-Smith, and that has become kind of the foundational deck on which most other tarot decks today are based. And what it does is it gives you like these 78 standard images that draw in symbolism and ideas and mythology from like around the world. Like they started incorporating Kabbalah and they started incorporating numerology and astrology into the cards. And so it gives you like all of this information with every single image. And my philosophy, is pretty down to earth. I know other tarot readers who are like very spiritual, who really believe they're channeling something divine. And my philosophy, the way I read, I really think we're just digging into your subconscious associations. You know what an inkblot test is. You see an image and it triggers some type of idea or pre-existing belief or memory in your head. Well, tarot is so full of lush symbolism and imagery that every single person is going to have a unique reaction to that card. And so it's a great way of kind of digging into the client's attitudes and helping her organize her thoughts and her emotions. And inevitably, whatever nagging thing she's been pushing down or has been bothering her is what comes up. And so for me, tarot is very much a two-way dialogue with my client to figure out what's going on in her life. And that's why I think it's a self-care practice. It's really not for divination in my world. It's not, we don't predict the future. People still have free will. It's really about using tarot as a tool for kind of organizing your thoughts, figuring out how you feel about things, getting a plan of action, and taking next steps, really. So that's my tarot shtick.
Awesome. Does anyone have any questions before we dive right in? Okay, let's dive in.
I think you addressed like one of my main questions. So basically it was just that like what percentage of like a tarot reading is like reading the future versus like a therapy session or like self-care experience, which I feel like you kind of answered that. Like,
I think that is going to vary dramatically depending on who's reading, and also on who the client is, right? So if a client comes to me and says, I am not spiritual, I don't believe in religion, I am just using this as a tool, that's what we're going to do. I don't do particularly spiritual readings. I've launched a new service that is a little bit more spiritual. I have what I'm now calling master readings, which do get into that stuff. But my standard targeted readings tend to be pretty grounded. And so if somebody came to me and said, I'm looking for somebody who channels, I'm looking for a psychic, I am not a psychic. I'm looking for somebody who's going to give me this very spiritual experience, I would probably refer them to somebody else. Because that's just, I can't give them that. That's not my personal style. So a big part of tarot is fit and making sure you're working with a reader who has the same values, who communicates with you in a way that is natural for you, who makes you feel comfortable. Not every client is a good fit for me. I'm not a good fit for everybody else, but I do have clients with whom I'm like a perfect fit. And so my best recommendation is to research readers and get to know them before you work with them, because I've had some very negative tarot readings before, and that's a totally avoidable experience. And I think that people do tend to go to tarot readers when some people go to tarot readers as like a regular self-care check-in, but I think a lot of people also go to tarot readers when they're feeling vulnerable, or when there's something that's bothering them, or when they're about to experience a big change, right? I'm getting married, or I'm moving, what do I need to know? And so you're really opening yourself up to somebody, and to have that then be a bad or negative experience, just kind of like, it's like kicking you when you're already down. Or when you're already vulnerable. So it's really important to kind of know who you're working with. And for me, like I make a big deal to my students about ethics. And for me, it's really important that I make it very clear on my website and my Instagram what my values are as a reader, so that people know exactly what they're getting. And if I don't think we're a good fit, I'm going to tell them so. For me, it's pretty... Sometimes weird stuff happens. Like occasionally I'll know something that I couldn't have known. And I just kind of leave it there like that. Like my clients tell me that they walk away feeling a lot better. They feel organized. Some of them do say like they felt like it was an emotional or spiritual experience for them. But I kind of leave it to them to decide that. And a lot of my clients come to me and say, I really like that you kept it down to earth and it wasn't super spiritual. So it's very personal.
Nice.
Yeah, I used to be like so afraid of even like trying to get a reading of any kind. Like whenever I'd hang out with my friends and let's do this if we were like in New Orleans, or there's even a place on K Street that does it. I don't know. I would be like so afraid of pulling that death card. But I think over time, as I learned more about it, and the reading that you did during the original HABITHON was like really enlightening. It definitely wasn't. I assumed that I knew what it was saying, and looking back, I'm not quite sure that I did. So I'm gonna like take notes now, because even though you sent me the cards, I was like, yeah, I remember what this meant, but I really don't think that I did. So I hope that you don't think it's weird that I'm gonna.
No, I encourage my clients. I have clients who like will record their readings.
Oh yeah,
You know, it's your reading. You do what you want during your reading. That said, there are definitely people out there who are either intentionally scamming people or who are claiming to be great tarot readers who have no business saying that. Like, there are people who will take advantage of you, and there are people who will give you bad readings, and you have to defend yourself against that. There's a tarot reader in DC, and if anybody wants me to privately tell them who it is so they can avoid them, I will tell you in private. But there is a tarot reader in DC who will actively scam you. Like, this person has a storefront, and when I first moved down here, it was my second year in DC. I had just started learning tarot. I was living, the roommate I told you about was gone. I was living with two horrible, mean girl roommates who were just making me feel uncomfortable in my own home. I had no money. You know, I was temping. And I decided to stop at this tarot reader because she was advertising $10 tarot readings and psychic readings. And I felt like I can afford that. And I thought, like, this will be a treat to myself. Like, it was a rainy night. I mean, everything, all of the factors, right? Like, I needed a pick me up, and I was learning tarot, and I thought I would love to go pay for a reading and see what a paid tarot reading feels like. I get upstairs and she says to me, oh, the price has changed. It's $20. And at the time, $20 was a lot for me to spend. I really had no money. And, but I said, okay, because I felt like I was already there and I felt kind of obligated, but I didn't have $20 in cash. And so I asked if she would take a credit card, and she said no. So and she also said to me, don't get the tarot reading, get the psychic. I mentioned to her that I was learning tarot, and she said, don't get the tarot reading, get the psychic reading. It's better. And that should have been a red flag, but I was young and stupid. I had to go to an ATM in the rain to get a $20 bill to give this woman because she wouldn't take my credit card. I should have just left and not gone back. Like, I knew I had a bad feeling, but at the time I felt bad, like I was obligated. So I went back, I gave her my $20. She tells me, you have pick a topic, but don't make it about money. It cannot be about money. Well, it was like a 24-year-old girl. So my topic wasn't going to be health. So what was it going to be? And she goes, you want a reading about love, right? Because I was 24. And then she says, you have connections to New York, San Francisco, and Chicago. Well, of course I do. Those are huge cities. Like, I know people in all those cities, sure. And then she tells me a few more things like that are just, I mean, it was insulting my intelligence. So I knew I was getting scammed at this point. She didn't even bother to pull out the tarot deck. She didn't even bother to like try. So after like 3 minutes, she says to me, you have a black mark on your aura. You do have a soulmate, but your destiny was derailed by abuse in your childhood. But abuse doesn't have to be physical for it to be abuse. I can undo this black mark on your aura so that you can meet your soulmate by giving you a crystal that you can hold over your heart for 15 minutes a day for 3 days. And I will meditate from afar and send energy to this crystal. Most people charge thousands of dollars for this service. My rate is $300, and for you, $150. And I said to her, I don't have any money, which was true. I said, I can't give you $150. I said, then also you don't take credit cards. And all of a sudden she was willing to take a credit card. And just like, and I said to her, I truly cannot afford this service, but thank you. And like, I kind of wanted my $20 back, and she fought with me. Like, she continued to argue, like, you can't afford not to do this. This is the spiritual equivalent of having stage 4 cancer. She literally said that to me.
Holy crap.
I said, I don't have $150. Maybe in the future if I save up some money, because I just wanted to get out of there. And she said, well, how much can you pay? I mean, and finally I just stood up. I said, no, thank you. I'm leaving. And she goes, well, hurry back, my dear dead Emily, which was like such a nasty thing to say. And like I was already super down, and like this woman just was completely horrible to me, and I literally paid her to do it. And like, yeah. So moral of the story, there are people like that out there, and they're jerks. They're not real tarot readers. And they're part of the reason that there are so many stereotypes and misconceptions about tarot out there. And unfortunately, they're not that's not uncommon. Like, there are plenty of them. So that said, I know a ton of really legitimate, wonderful, amazing tarot readers in the DC area, and co-facilitator of the Capital Tarot Society. I've been going to monthly reading meetings with these people every month for 10 years now. And I can name 40 people in the DC area who I think are magnificent tarot readers, and I would trust any one of them to give you like a well-intended reading. So like, there are plenty of great tarot readers out there too. They all have different styles. So, not every single one of them is going to be a fit, but they're all legitimate. So you just have to do your research. But anyway, and I know that was a bit of a tangent, but like,
No, I feel
it's a
like
pretty
that
good
was
story
really
too.
important. Yeah, that was super crazy. Yeah, I would love to know who that was.
I'll if anybody wants to know, just reach out. I don't want to say it publicly just because that can get you in trouble. But
I want to know too.
Yeah, just reach out to me privately, and I'll tell you exactly who it was.
Also, Emily's gonna be offering a discount to her tarot school. So she'll provide all that information at the end too, and I can email it to everyone who is participating in this call.
Yeah, so I have this online tarot classroom where it's a one-time fee to join as a member, and then it's like unlimited access for as long as the thing exists. And I already have 13 plus hours of tarot training content, and I'm working on another unit now. Plus there's like quizzes and a Facebook community and supplemental materials. And it's basically everything that I wish somebody had told me when I started learning tarot, and like all of the mistakes that I have made and all the lessons I've learned from them, I am now imparting. And actually the rate is going up significantly on August 1st. So now is the right time to jump in, and we're doing a $50 discount for anybody involved in HABITHON. So there's a special link that I gave Lauren that she will send out that enables you to get that discount.
It's the fundraiser that keeps on giving, y'all. Just kidding. Has to do with it. But okay. Should we do a reading now?
Yeah. So Lauren volunteered to be kind of like my first victim. I always like to have someone kind of volunteer to go first because I don't want people to feel intimidated, right? So having kind of a courageous first guinea pig is always helpful. I'm going to be reading with a deck called the Goddess Tarot. This is not a traditional tarot deck. It's based on that Rider-Waite-Smith, but the imagery is very different. It's replaced all of the major arcana cards with goddesses from world mythology. I do all of my paid readings with this deck. Some people like to switch up their decks. I'm what we call in my community a deck monogamist. I only read with the one deck. I have several others that I play with, but this is my reading deck. And I like it because it's nice, gentle imagery. It's G-rated. There's nothing creepy about it. So Lauren, do you have a particular question or topic?
We could just maybe do like romance.
Let's see where romance is headed. What's going on? I'm going to do a short 3-card reading for time. Normally when I meet with clients, if it's an in-person meeting, we go for 60 minutes. That's my minimum because we dig deep. During the pandemic, I've been offering 30-minute sessions over Zoom and phone because I think 60 minutes over the phone is a lot. But yeah, normally I go 60 minutes. So this is like the very short and sweet version of what I do. But we're going to do a 3-card reading, and 3-card readings can be actually quite valid. All right, so I'm shuffling them on Lauren's behalf. I'm going to cut them for you, and then we're going to pull 3 cards and see what we get. All right. They're cut. All right. I will hold these up for you. I love it when the reading like exactly fits the question. So you got 2 cards that are in the suit of cups. So that's the suit that corresponds to hearts and regular playing cards. Can everybody see that okay? So cups, so each of the 4 minor arcana suits is associated with one of the 4 elements. So this is water. It's like associated with hearts and playing cards, and water is emotions and relationships and creativity, intuition. So that's very fitting in a romantic reading. And what we start with is the 8 of Cups. And if you take a look at the imagery, if you want a tarot lesson, we can all be tarot readers right now. What do you guys feel like is happening in this card? Like, what do you see? I'll try to make it easy to see. Like, even if you just want to describe the scene, like what's the action being taken in this scene?
Feel free, but I think I see her gazing like longingly or like questioning things at the moon.
And she's like walking away from us. So I feel like that says something.
Right. So knowing that this is in the context of relationships, we have somebody walking away, maybe towards something as well, like longingly toward the moon. But what would that, you're just going to take a guess about what this card represents. What do you think it represents?
Is it me walking away or them walking away? Or us both walking away?
You tell me. It's your reading.
Oh, I'm saying out loud?
If you want.
Most people can assume whatever they want. I feel like I think I know what it means. Two people walked away, usually.
So the 8 is basically walking away from something that isn't serving you emotionally. Like, the other thing about these suits is there's an ace through a 10. So if you look at that as a chronological process, as a journey, the ace is the starting point, the 10 is the final outcome, and then a 5 typically represents some type of hurdle that you need to overcome. So like the 2 and the 3 and the 4 are kind of ramping up. You're going about your business, you're having a great time, you got this idea, now you're moving forward, but you're still green, and then you have some type of like, bam, setback at the 5. And that's a learning experience. And so the 6 and the 7 are kind of overcoming that learning experience. And now you're smarter and you're wiser and you're heading toward the final outcome of the 10, which is ultimately like being better realized and having a lot of wisdom. So the 8 is kind of this midway point between a setback you had to get over and this final outcome that you're heading toward, right? It's very much about directionality. Like, she's literally heading in a direction. And so she's leaving behind all of these cups. Right. So we actually, like, one of the decks that I have refers to this card as drunkenness, is like the drunk card. Or more like the hangover, but keeping in mind that these are metaphorical cups. Right. So it's like saying that you're a little bit hungover emotionally from all of the drama, or like what all of these like investments and kind of like negative thoughts and toxicity and difficulty. And like, it's like saying, you know what, I've had enough. I'm leaving. I just can't deal with this crap anymore. I'm moving on. I drank too much wine from these cups. I'm leaving. Bye. Like, and it's on an emotional level. There are other cards that kind of correspond to this one in the other suits, but those are in different places, like your mentality or, in different fields of your life, or like in your career. This is in relationships and emotions. So it's saying like, this is no longer serving me emotionally, and I am choosing to move on from it because it is not emotionally healthy for me. I want to be in a healthier place emotionally. And what's interesting is the middle card you got was the card that precedes that, the 7 of Cups. So you'll kind of see why we view this 8 as kind of like the hangover card, or the drunkenness card. If you take a look, you see this woman, her face is down here. She's kind of like dreamy or up in the clouds. And then each of these cups has like something different in it, right? So this card can be interpreted as having a lot of options, a lot of choices to make, but also like maybe a lot of fantasies. It's like overthinking, and it can actually be analysis paralysis, but like emotional analysis paralysis, right? It's like being overwhelmed, so many options, so many choices. I don't know what to do. And then the 8 is saying, screw it, I'm leaving. But what's interesting is the 8 came first, and then this came in the middle. So it's almost like saying, like, this is the position that you're in. This is kind of how you started, but this is the core central issue. So we can come back to that. And then there's this final card that I drew, different suit, 2 of Wands, or in this deck, it's called the Staves. This is fire energy. So what do we associate with fire? Does anybody want to, since we're doing a lesson as well, does anybody want to, like, if you know that water is emotions and creativity, what do you think fire is?
Passion.
Mm-hmm. What else?
Anger?
Maybe. I mean, anger is more of an emotion, right? So like I would say maybe action, energy, frenetic. Also, interestingly, this is heavily associated with feminine energy, and this is heavily associated with masculine energy. If you don't like to do the gender stuff, you can also call it yin and yang. But traditionally, this is feminine and this is masculine. So you have this dichotomy between the yin and the yang. Yin is very internal, very kind of like going within, exploring your own intuition, your own internal emotional process. This is very external. It's very much like setting out, making things happen, you know, putting your energy out there, having an impact on the external world. And remember what I said about ACE through 10, this is the 2. So this is the very next step after the ACE. So if you look at the ACE is just the first idea, very beginning. The 2 is like the very next step after that. Okay, I had an idea, now I actually have to turn it into a real plan. So what we have is kind of this step-by-step chronology of, I don't want drama in my life. I'm overwhelmed, I'm done, I'm moving on. I have so many options and choices that it's almost difficult to move or to figure out what I'm going to do. And then the final card, which, you know, if you look at this more as divination, could mean a prediction. But in my practice, this typically means a prescription. Like, what are we going to do about this problem? This to me means force yourself to sit down and create a plan of action, right? And that also says it could be a few different things, right? Fire is a suit we would associate with impulse and frenetic energy. But you know, it's very much about planning and taking action as well. And so I think it's almost cautionary. It's saying, don't just act impulsively on this because you don't know what to do. Like, really take the time to step back and say, okay, this is the plan. These are the steps I'm going to take. And if you look at the way these things are positioned, it's almost like she's walking through a gate. I've had people point that out. Other decks make that part much more obvious in their imagery, but it can sometimes look like she's actually walking through a gate. It's taking a step, right? So I think this is almost like spinning your wheels emotionally. And this is saying, okay, like, time to stop doing that and actually act, right? Excuse me. So Lauren, since this is your reading, I don't know if any of that's resonating for you, if there's anything that you actually want to share, or if anything jumped out at you.
All of it is resonating with me. And my friend Abby just messaged me on the side saying very on point. Sorry if that was a personal comment, but I don't think that it was. Could it like start like, and in any reading, and this is kind of what happened in the last time too, could it start like when you're wanting to learn about like romance or something, and as the cards like come out, you decide the cards are telling you something else, like, or is it always like, ask about romance, try to think about each card in like a romantic space?
The cards tell you what you need to know. And oftentimes people will sometimes ask one question in order to avoid dealing with a different issue. I actually did a reading once, this is when I was doing Etsy, where a woman hired me to do a specific type of layout that I put on my Etsy shop. And I intuited it without talking to her, wrote it up, sent it to her. She wrote back and she said, this has nothing to do with me, but you 100% accurately described my friend's situation. And this was like a paid big reading. So this was like extensive, right? With a lot of detail. She said, like, this is 100% my friend. And I wrote back and I said, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to redo your reading? And she said, no, because it was really bothering me. And that's what I was thinking about when I'd been thinking about that when I went to purchase your reading. And like, so obviously this was what I needed to hear. I just wanted to let you know because I thought that was so interesting. I was like, great, I'm glad you liked it. If we go back to my philosophy that what we're really digging up isn't necessarily any type of divine wisdom, it's your subconscious. So whatever is front of mind for you, whatever you feel you need to be working on is what you're going to see. That's what it's going to draw up for you. So if there's a different situation that you feel this fits for you, that makes perfect sense.
I mean, I feel like it fits both. I feel like it like fits my like recent relationship ambiguous thing like to a T, and also what was happening in my mind mentally with like other aspects of my life. So it seems really accurate. And I really appreciate that. And I'm glad that I took notes and I did support it as well.
And keep in mind, when I do my 60-minute readings, one, there would be more cards. And two, we would have more time. So we'd have the option to pull additional cards to get more clarity on what the message is relating to. So you would have more of an option to like kind of dig in. I'm sorry, I feel like I cut you off though.
Do you do readings for yourself?
No.
No?
I try, but I can't. I have to have other people do them for me.
Wow, that's super interesting.
Too much cognitive bias. And I actually like tell stories as cautionary tales to my students of like me trying to read for myself and like the hijinks that ensued because I completely misinterpreted my own reading to be what I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And I just learned some people can do it, I cannot. I'm also just bad at receiving tarot readings in general at this point. Like at this point, I feel like it's my job to read and give the readings, not to receive.
Wow.
Yeah, which is very yang and not very yin. And I'm sure the people in my tarot society would have a lot to say about that. but
Well,
they know
maybe
me
they're
very
watching now. Does someone else want to, or do you want to pull like one card? We also talked about doing the Cards Against Humanity thing. However you want to do the rest, just take over.
We can give people the options. So one of the things that I do at like parties, I've actually also done this as a stage performance. I was invited to participate in an Edgar Allan Poe themed cabaret. And I went up on stage and I pulled up people I dressed in Victorian clothes, and I pulled people up from the audience to receive one card readings in front of the whole audience. And that was kind of fun. So everyone has the option to receive like just a one card tarot reading. And, it's not super in depth, but like I can tell you what the card means, and you can see if you feel that there's any lesson in that for you. We can continue to use the deck I've been working with. I also, for fun, pulled out my Golden Girls tarot cards. If anybody's related to the Golden Girls, I have other decks that I play with. But then I also have Cards Against Humanity cards sitting next to me. And I have been doing short Cards Against Humanity tarot readings on my Instagram. So I have like 7 of them now in like one of my IGTV series. And I did it thinking it was going to be really funny. But what's happening is I'm getting really tame cards so far, but then the readings are ending up being like very real. And people are writing back and saying, this is like a real tarot reading. And I'm like, okay, I'm like freaking myself out a little bit. But so
I would love if you would show us how you do it with Cards Against Humanity.
Okay. So Teresa, do you want to be my volunteer for that?
Sure.
Okay. I think for Cards Against Humanity, just because it's helpful to have multiple cards, for you, we're going to do a 3-card reading. I'm over here pulling them out of the box.
Okay.
Okay. So the cards I got.
I don't own those cards, but I played the game a lot. So I can't imagine how you did this.
Yeah. So again, I got really tame cards because I think they were actually trying to give me real readings. So the cards I got are a box-shaped man. So if anybody's ever done one of like the big box extensions, it comes with a pack of 24 cards that all have to do with the word box. And these have kept coming up in these readings, and I'm like, So box-shaped man, shapeshifters, and grandma. So all very tame. But what immediately stands out, like the way I've been making these work is themes. And that's why I wanted to pull multiple cards for this, because I feel like you need multiple cards to figure out what the theme is. But look, these both have to do with the shape that a person is taking, right? So you have a box-shaped man, and then you have shapeshifters. So the concept here, I think, is transformation, or like shifting shape from one thing to another. And then the final card is grandma. So I don't want to make any assumptions, but it almost feels like what this is talking about is a shift, like a role change. Like you thought you were one thing, you took on this one shape, you had this one way of viewing yourself, and then a transformation happened, and now you're viewing yourself totally differently and playing a totally different role.
Well, I'll tell you real quick what's going on. I am shifting my old story because I've been telling myself for so long now, you're too old. You're too old to do anything. You're too old. You're too old. I'll be 67 in about a week. And I went to Tony Robbinson's motivational thing, and they talk about changing your story. So I've really been working on that. Like, I'm just getting started. So I am shifting that thing of I'm too old.
Grandma thing is age.
Yeah.
Yeah. So see what they're doing? It's weird, right?
That's cool.
Right? And you expect to get ones that are all about. You're welcome. I keep pulling them, expecting to get ones that are about like body fluids and stuff, and they're not.
Yeah.
Would it be possible for you to do a reading for everyone on the call, even if it's just like one card?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so yeah, one card. We should be able to do one card readings. People can pick the deck that they want. It might be hard to do a one card with Cards Against Humanity, but I'm willing to try it. But you can also pick Goddess Tarot, Golden Girls Tarot, or Cards Against Humanity.
Does anyone want to volunteer to go first?
I can.
Angie.
Lauren, who did you see first?
I think Angie.
Okay. So do you have a preference?
The Goddess one.
The Goddess Tarot. Okay. So I'm just going to shuffle really quick, and we're going to pull one card. we're going to see what you get.
Awesome.
All right. Okay, so I got this card. It's the Judgment card. And it's interpreted in this deck as the goddess Guinevere. And Judgment is actually a card that I struggle with because in this deck, it refers to the Christian judgment, which I'm not Christian, so it doesn't really mean a lot to me. So there are a number of different ways that this card can be interpreted if that doesn't speak to you. And what I've kind of landed on is either taking it literally, as in judging yourself or feeling very, very judged, or because a lot of devout Christians have told me that the judgment is really about being forgiven by God. This is also a card that can be heavily associated with forgiveness. And those two things can be very connected. So, and this is also from the Major Arcana. Major Arcana cards are basically interpreted to have kind of like a heavier energy, to be more intense than the regular like kind of 4 elemental suits. They represent more like overarching energies in your life, like big life themes, as opposed to day-to-day actions and issues that are represented by the Minor Arcana. So it's kind of a heavy card. And what it says to me is maybe there's a lot going on right now that has to do with feeling judged, or maybe judging yourself too harshly and deserving or needing a little bit more forgiveness energy in your life. I don't know if that's resonating to you in any way.
Honestly, it's not. And I'm finally getting to the point where I'm like letting go of the judgment and like accepting myself who I am. And like for the first time, like I'm not feeling overly critical of myself.
Well, I mean, it could represent that this is something that you've conquered, right? Or maybe it says that you've actually reached that point of forgiveness, because it is like kind of toward the end, right? This is the second to last card in the Major Arcana. So if we do look at that as a sequence, it does represent kind of finality, like, right? The judgment is something that happens at the end of times. So I don't think it would be unreasonable to interpret this as saying you've conquered this, you've reached this point of kind of ultimate forgiveness, you know, even reaching a point of divine wisdom, or just kind of like accepting being a higher version of yourself. I think that gets very wrapped up in this card. I think this is a card that does have to do with spirituality and you know, awareness. Whereas there are other cards that can represent judgment on more of like an earthly plan. Like there's a justice card in there too, that's much earlier on in the sequence, that can be used to represent, you know, people getting what they deserve or being judged as well. So this is kind of judgment on a higher plane. So, you know, if you want to reach out, we can play around with this more and see if we can get at exactly what it's saying.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right. Do we have any other volunteers?
Can I go next?
Yeah. Okay. Do you have a preference?
Which one was like the one about love life that Lauren used?
So there's no deck that's specific to love life, right?
Oh,
so that's this deck. And then I also just have Golden Girls tarot cards, which I think are funny, which are actually very much in keeping with the original Rider-Waite-Smith deck. It's just with Golden Girls on them.
Okay.
If you want to
the goddess one, then.
Okay. Yeah, does Lauren manage to get a lot of the cup cards, which are the suit that's really heavily associated with love and romance? But this has all of the suits in it. Okay. Okay. So you got a card called the Three of Swords in reverse position, which is, you know, it's kind of like a cue for how to interpret the card. So it's a really interesting card because swords is actually associated with the element of air, which is brains. It's like your mind, your mindset, how you view the world. But it involves a heart, and it's a card that's associated actually with sadness. But when you put those two things together, you know, because you would normally think of sadness as a cups card. So when you put those things together, it speaks to kind of like a self-inflicted sadness. It's almost like, you know, the kind of overthinking and kind of like negative thoughts that can lead to just kind of a negative mindset and like bad emotions when it's almost like self-inflicted. And it's almost like saying that like there is an escape from whatever negative thing is happening by changing, you know, a mentality or changing the way you see it. We're getting heavy cards tonight, but I don't know if this is resonating for you in particular.
Like a sadness and love life, or
Well, just in general, like, is this, I mean, does this feel like it's occurring for you? Like, does this make sense for you, or is it not connecting?
Not really. I mean, last year that would have made sense because of a breakup, but like this year I'm just like getting random dates with people I don't really connect with. So
I mean, it can be a heartbreak card. It's just what makes this card interesting as compared to, say, the Cups cards, which are the cards that showed up more in Lauren's reading, is that this is a mental card. So it's like saying that, yes, there's an emotional component, but a lot of it has to do with what's going on in your head. So, you know, it could have to do with like overanalysis, or it could have to do with maybe having like expectations that need to be shifted in order to have a better time of it. Like if you're not getting dates where people are connecting, maybe it's saying that like there needs to be a shift in perspective or expectation, or maybe there's like a thought process you can undertake to, you know, to kind of find a better path that will enable you to actually get the emotional outcomes that you're looking for. Like it's an interesting nexus between the mental and the emotional in this card.
okay.
Is that making sense?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. We can dig in further if you want to reach out. All right. Does anybody else want a... Okay.
I do.
We also have Abby, who you can't see, but I'm sure that she wants one too. If you don't mind, I know we're running out of time.
Yes, I definitely do. I'm here. I'm driving for DoorDash, but I'm here.
Yeah, she's really into this, so I know.
We'll do Abby and then Emily, and then we'll be done.
And then Emily also wanted a 30-minute free reading, so you get like a lot of time together.
Okay, so Abby, I'm just gonna, do you want to do the goddess deck?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna shuffle again for you, and then we'll pull one card.
Sweet.
Okay. Your card is, so it's in reverse again, but this is the Magician card, which is reinterpreted as the goddess Isis.
Okay.
In the goddess deck. So this is, remember when I said Wands energy, like that's a fire suit? This card is heavily connected with that. It's the number 1 in the major arcana, which actually makes it the second card because there's a 0 in the major arcana, but this is the number 1, which is very heavily associated with masculine yang energy, and it's a power card. So this is a card that's very much about, you know, kind of like kicking ass and taking names, putting yourself out there, making things happen, taking action, feisty personalities, like large and in charge. So I don't know if that's resonating for you or if that means something to you, but that's what this card typically represents.
Totally.
I think it checks out.
That's definitely resonating.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Cool. Well, that's your card for the day. All right. And then we want to pull, you're welcome. We want to pull one final card for Emily. Put that back in the deck. We're going to shuffle. These cards are larger than normal poker cards, so it takes like a really long time to get used to shuffling them. And like I give them to my clients to shuffle and they have no idea what to do. All right. All right, Emily, I'm pulling your card.
Okay.
You got the 7 of Cups, which came up in Lauren's reading earlier. So this is the card that's very much about having a lot of different choices and options, and the emotional confusion or sense of being a little bit overwhelmed, or even having analysis paralysis as a result of that, and like kind of spinning in place because you don't know what to pick or choose from the options you're being presented with. It can also represent fantasy or dreaming, and being like very much up in your head and in the clouds about what's going on. So this can also be like perceived options that aren't there, or you know, like focusing a lot on what could be or you know, unrealistic expectations versus the actual choices that need to be made in front of you. I don't know if that's resonating.
Yeah, I think analysis paralysis is like my biggest weakness. So I think Lo can attest to that.
But kind of like the 3 of Swords that we saw in Angel's reading, this is an interesting nexus because it does, again, have a nexus kind of between the emotional and the mental, right? It's like there's an analysis paralysis, but this is ultimately in the suit that relates to emotions. So it's really very much about the emotional impact that that's having on you.
Yeah.
And how it's kind of affecting you on an internal level. rather than on an analytical level. So it's like the analysis is happening on the surface, but then the emotional impacts are really what the card is focusing on.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So hopefully that resonates.
No, it does.
And if anybody has any questions about the cards that you got, because, you know, we don't have a lot of time here to dig in, but if you want to reach out to me individually, I'm happy to like spend a little more time answering questions. And I think I think everybody got their reading, right?
Yeah, that was awesome. And we're only 2 minutes over.
Yay!
That's good.
Thank you so much. I learned a lot.
Oh, thanks for joining.
Emily,
Yeah, thank you. That was super fun.
could you tell me your Instagram site?
It's just Woven Psyche. I can put that in the chat if you want.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
it'd be good if I spelled my own name right. Okay. So I just put my Instagram in the chat, and then Lauren, I don't have that link that I sent you to my classroom
I can forward it
handy.
to everyone.
Can we find it on your site?
Okay.
For your class?
So, yeah, so if you go to Woven Psyche, so what my Instagram is Woven Psyche, my website is just wovenpsyche.com. There's a tab there for my classroom and a link to pay, but it doesn't have the discount. And because you participated in the HABITHON, you can get a $50 discount off of the rate. And
how do we do that when we go to pay?
Well, Lauren's going to send you a special link.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Also,
you.
if you do Venmo, you can just Venmo me. And like, I think I'll probably remember that you were on the call. And my Venmo is, guess what? Woven Psyche. That's what's great about having such a weird, unique name. Like, it's just same across the board.
It's you.
Yeah, it's me. I'm the only one out there. So, yeah. So if you do Venmo and you decide you want to join, you can just Venmo me at Woven Psyche and say it's for the online classroom, and make sure I have your email address so that I can send you what you need to join. But definitely check out the information on my website so that you know what you're getting into. It's great if you're on Facebook, because the Facebook community has a lot of additional features. It's a really user-friendly interface. If you're not on Facebook, you can still have access to the videos. I can send you links to the videos, but it's not going to be as interactive. And it's a little bit clunkier. Also, one thing that I did was create a Facebook account just for Woven Psyche that I do just to join my tarot communities. So it's like totally clutter free, and that's also been awesome. Yeah, so that's that stuff.
That's awesome. I'm going to kind of just copy and paste what you sent me to send to everyone. So I'll just send it to everyone that was a part of this class.
Good. The rate is going up for the classroom on August 1st because I had kind of like an early bird rate because I wanted to develop like a core of students. And now that I'm there, and because I continuously add new content to the classroom, it goes up in value. So over time, like the price goes up as well. So if you think that's of interest, now is the time, because it's going to go up on August 1st. But you'll get the discount either way.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to send it to everyone. Just a side note, there's a lot more HABITHON events in store every day this week until August 3rd, so y'all check back on the sketch. And then it'll end on August 3rd, and finally, everyone who is my Facebook friend will have, like, can finally sleep and stop staring at all this stuff. And I can sleep too. But for Emily from Woven Psyche, we have another drink making class this Saturday if you want to join, because I know last time you wanted to join. So
how do I do that?
It's a comedy and cocktail class. We're making a strawberry spritz. So I can also send that link. I can send you the Zoom link to everyone on this call for free, just because I also want this guy to see that he has a lot of fans.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you so much, Emily. I
Thank you, Emily.
really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad.
It was really interesting. Thank you.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Feel free to reach out with any questions. Yeah, and I'm happy to be a resource.
Awesome.
Thank you. Have a good night,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.